So on this week's episode of the Impact Sessions, I'm absolutely delighted to have Salma Karolia as my guest. Salma is currently, and I say currently, we'll explain why in a minute, CEO of SK Cosmetics. The title of the podcast is The World of the Serial Entrepreneur, and Salma's been involved in entrepreneur sort of activities for a number of years, so that's why I say currently, because there might be all sorts of things going on in her world. So first of all, welcome to the Impact Session, Salma.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Excellent to see you. It's you're looking well and looking good. That must be the cosmetics brand working as well, is it?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, I'm going to run through a series of questions and just have a chat. I think a lot of people are interested and intrigued by entrepreneurship. It's also quite misunderstood, I think, isn't it, in terms of what it means. So, because I've known you for a long time, I thought, you'd be a really interesting, good guest for the audience, just to see what your take on things are. So welcome along, and let's have a chilled, relax, and a chat and see what we can get through, shall we?
Thank you. Yeah, looking forward to the next moment.
Well, yeah, we'll probably get about 35, 40 minutes or so, and it'll fly by, or it usually does. It might not. If it doesn't, it's been...
Don't shut up half the time, do I?
Well, there you go. Could be longer than that. So listen, Sam, I've known you for... I've said over 10 years, but when did we start working together on your sort of beauty academy? What year would that have been roughly?
The business launched in 2003, and it will have been about 2005, maybe 2006
Goodness
that we
me.
met.
Wow, okay. That makes me feel old. Thank you for the start to that. That's brilliant. Okay. The reason I've invited you on, it's fair to say that you never really stand still, do you? Certainly in terms of business. Do you want to give us a bit about your background and how you got into business in the first place, and sort of what you're up to now and involved in at the moment?
Yeah, so I actually had no intention of doing business whatsoever. I was trained to be a midwife.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so a little bit of a turn. But I knew how to do hair and makeup, and a lot of times people would say, well, can you do my hair for me? Can you do my makeup for me? And I'd say, yes, I can. But I couldn't really charge them because I didn't have insurance. I wasn't trading as such. So I decided to do a short training course. I thought, well, although I'm getting to the end goal, achieving the result, I wasn't 100% certain if the steps that I was taking was correct. So I thought I'll do this course, and the closest course to me to do an intense short course was in Liverpool.
And that, for those who don't know, that's about an hour and a half, probably 2 hours drive from Yorkshire, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, yeah. So I started doing this training course, and whilst I was doing that, I knew how to do threading. I'd just sort of self-taught myself over the years. And my tutor said to me, well, after we finished our class, do you mind if you can just do my threading for me on my eyebrows?
What's thread? Oh, is that where they use a little piece of string?
It's a piece of string to shape the eyebrows. And quite often local people used to call me the eyebrow doctor. Apparently I used to do really nice eyebrows. So I said, yes, of course I can. So I started doing the eyebrows, and the principal of the organisation was walking past, and she was a traditional sort of head teacher, looking at me like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, can I see you in my office after this? And I thought, oh no.
What have I done?
Oh, what have I done? Was I not supposed to be doing this? So I thought, okay, that's fine. So I went to the office, and she said, I saw you doing threading and it looked quite good. I says, okay, thank you. So she says, do you mind teaching it? I'm like, no, of course, that'll be fine. So I started teaching that, and that opened
as part of the course then? Okay.
As part of a separate course.
Okay.
It was just like a taster course. So it wasn't regulated at the time. It wasn't certified. Quite quickly, I was approached by HABIA, which is the Hair and Beauty Industry Association that sets the standards for the UK for all sorts of beauty courses. And they said, well, you're doing threading, but it's not accredited, it's not insurable, so can you come and sit onto the panel and, let's put together some standards? Yeah, fine. So went to Doncaster, started putting these occupational standards together, which we did, and it became a training programme as part of an NVQ unit. So very quickly I found myself travelling up and down the country teaching threading to college lecturers and anybody and everybody. So that's how the journey began. Quite quickly I identified that there was a gap in the market in Yorkshire. There wasn't many organisations, or if any actually, that were doing short, intense training courses. So there was loads of colleges that were doing all these long courses, 16-week courses, 32 weeks, full academic year, but nothing that was sort of sharp and snappy.
And what sort of short and snappy were you looking for then in terms of beauty? What would that be? Makeup, hair, nails, what kind of stuff were you, what was the gap?
When I initially started the business, I was offering about 5 training courses. By the time I sold the business, there were 62 training courses in beauty, nails, holistic therapies and hairdressing.
Good grief. Okay.
Yeah, and that included everything from massage to nails to all kinds of things.
And all quite short, intensive, easy, accessible. Because I think that's the key, wasn't it, to the academy? It made it accessible for people who aspired to work in that sector, in that industry, and they weren't going on like a 2-year course at college and day release and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So the target market was more so adults as opposed to the 16-year-olds or 18-year-olds, although we did get many 16 to 18-year-olds doing the courses. But it was more for the mature people that wanted a change in career, wanted to do something different. But as I was doing the training courses and we had set up the academy, there was a gap in the market again.
Right.
So once people do the training courses, before you get your products at wholesale prices, which you need your certificate to be able to say, can I access this wholesale market? So there was certificates could take a number of weeks before they arrive. So I set up another business called Salon Experts, which was all wholesale products to mainly students, and started accessing colleges and supplying colleges.
So like a startup pack for them if they were as they came off the qualification, a startup pack for them to get going initially. Was that the thought process?
At that time, 16 years ago, there wasn't much of this e-commerce business. So the local people were travelling to. I'm from Batley, so local people were travelling to either Huddersfield or Leeds or nearby.
Well, again, for those who don't know, we're talking about 10 miles or whatever. It might be public transport if they didn't have access to. So not convenience, not like ordering online these days and getting them the next day or the same day from places. Yeah, so, okay. I was talking to somebody earlier on an earlier podcast about the days of pre-Google and pre-internet and pre-Amazon, and it did exist, didn't it?
It did. Hard to imagine it now, though, isn't it?
So this thing about spotted a gap, saw this opportunity, is that trained or just instinctive, do you think? Where does that come from?
For me, it wasn't trained. I need a slap on the back of the wrist for this, actually. I don't plan many things. So, and when I'm actually doing business coaching, I always say, well, we need to do a cash flow forecast. We need to do a plan. We need to see, what does the business look like in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. Actually, I'm the biggest culprit. I don't do none of that. It's just a case of an opportunity comes my way, just grab it and run with it, figure out how to do it after. And it's worked for me.
And I think, to be fair, that's probably one element of an entrepreneur is that kind of can-do attitude and things, isn't it, really? So we'll go back a little bit over the sort of style of the podcast. But so what are you up to now then? When did you move on from and sell your beauty academy, and what are you up to now with SK Cosmetics?
So I sold the businesses in March last year.
2019, yeah?
Yeah, in March 2019. And to be fair, I actually never thought I'd ever sell the business. I always thought this was my be-all and end-all. You kind of eat, breathe, the beauty academy. So about a couple of years ago, I had a thought that I need to exit from this business. I felt like I was getting a bit old, and I thought, if I'm in it now, I'm going to be in it forever. Is this what I want to do? I kind of fell into it. And before I knew it, although we were doing beauty, I was also doing things like apprenticeships, traineeships, employability, SIA courses. It's like I said, opportunities come your way, grab it.
Yeah.
So I decided I wanted to sell it. I thought I was going through a little bit of a midlife crisis, because I always said I'd never get married. And 2 years ago, I thought, I'm getting married. And I did. I thought, now I'm saying I'd never sell the business, and I'm selling the business. What is going on? So I thought, okay, which one is it? So I got married and I left the business. And then 6 months later, I thought, no, I think I'm ready to sell.
Yeah. Okay. So SK Cosmetics, where did that come from?
My passion for beauty, passion for makeup, and although it's a very crowded market, initially when I sat back and I thought, right, I do need to do a little bit of research. No, Salma, your idea and then just springing it into action, is it going to work on this instance? It's a huge industry of experts and famous people and celebrities and so on.
Lots of established brands, isn't there, and stuff? Yeah, lots of them.
Many, yes. So I started doing a little bit of research, and actually, although the market is very crowded, when I had a look at what I wanted to do, which was making sure it was vegan and cruelty-free, and also the packaging was made out of recycled products, all that sort of stuff, it actually wasn't that crowded, because there isn't many makeup brands that also hold a social responsibility. So every couple of months, I choose a charity, and we pay a percentage of the profits of the charity. And although it looks as if that it's a crowded market, when you look down to the nitty-gritties, it isn't.
Okay, so you could easily fit into competing with some of the really big boys with a very different niche approach to, how you manufacture, package, and support the local communities along that line. Okay, so is that important to you then? The sort of the giving back and the charitable aspect of the business then?
Definitely, very much so. Yeah. I'm a ambassador for a few charities as well, and I'm really passionate about charities. Actually, when I sold the business, one of the things that I was sort of weighing up my options. Okay, what am I going to do? It's not time to retire, and I always say, the day I retire, I'll probably die.
far too young to retire. To be fair.
It's just going to be way too boring as well. So I thought, right, what is it that I want to do? And charities was one of the options, but I'm passionate about all sorts of things from people with terminal illness to children. So it was a case of, no, actually, let's follow the passion, let's do the cosmetics and have a, split the profits every couple of months to a specific charity, and that's what we do.
Entrepreneurship, I'm going to talk about that. The Oxford English Dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who sets up a business or businesses taking on financial risk in the hope of profit. Do you agree with that, or is it more than just about making the money?
It's definitely more than just making the money, but they do take a financial risk. Looking, for example, myself, it's following the passion. If you're passionate about something, you will make it work. And quite often you come across people that have made hobbies into a business. So yes, they definitely take a risk and they definitely, invest in some time, effort and money to be able to make a profit. But there is a lot more to that.
You're a people person, aren't you, really?
Yeah, very much so.
So in terms of that, how big did Salma's Beauty Academy get in terms of your team when you were at your sort of height and biggest, delivering all the additional services that you tripped upon and took advantage of in terms of adding them into your service?
There was a head count of 42.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Did you ever see yourself as a business owner of 42 staff and responsibility for all that?
Never. Absolutely never.
So when it got to that, did it still feel right? Did it still feel like it was Salma's? It was called obviously Salma's Beauty Academy, so the name was there. Did it feel like yours? Did it get too big for an entrepreneur? Is there a level that feels right? I'm just trying to understand sort of where the entrepreneur and the growth bit sort of sits naturally. Yeah.
As the business grew, and I never anticipated it to grow as much as it actually did. Going back about 5 or 6 years ago, I had a little bit of a sort of like a crisis within my head. I felt like I was working all hours God's given, working round the clock, and I was meeting myself going backwards. And because I had just sort of grabbed every opportunity that came, it was a case of, right, I've won this contract of X amount of thousands of pounds. This is, these are the resources that we're going to need. This is the manpower we're going to need, I didn't really have a structure as such in terms of middle management. So I was taking the responsibility of all sort of reporting lines. So I had to take a step back, and we did a full-on restructure, created a lot more jobs, and that was the best thing I ever did. So if there's a business owner that's out there meeting themselves coming backwards, thinking they can't respond to the emails, thinking that they can't take all the calls, the voicemails exploding, going home on a night, still checking the emails, it was the best thing I ever did.
Okay.
I would recommend everybody to sort of sit back, take a look at the structure and see if there's a middle management that they can draw in.
So entrepreneurs by their very nature, though, are action-orientated, passionate, probably a bit of control freak in there somewhere.
Yep.
So if you've got that control freak nature, is it hard to give up some of that direct responsibility when you get to a certain size, to trust other people in middle management and whatever? You don't need to know everything that's going on in the business, but was there an element of uncertainty and doubt and concern that you didn't know everything that was going on?
It took me a while to accept that. And one of the things that I implemented every day, I wanted to know what everybody was doing, making sure that the 2-ring rule applied and the phones were answered in 2 rings and so on.
Yeah.
And I did have to just take a little bit of a step back and just trust them. But I implemented 10 at 10. So at 10 o'clock, everybody would have 10 minutes just to talk to the team, what's going on. So everybody on schedule, who's running behind, who's got time, sort of doing a little bit of shuffling, and that worked amazingly well.
Okay, that's a great little... The thing is, when you're busy, it's the quick tips that work, isn't it? You don't have to have long meetings, you just have to have a touch point, don't you? What do we need to know? What's working, what's not working, what help do you need? That kind of approach.
I was talking to a friend recently, and she said to me, all I seem to find myself doing is no work and meetings after meetings. She says, I seem to be having meetings for meetings. And I says, well, are they actually productive? Are you actually doing anything? She says, no. But how do I tell my manager that?
Yeah, that's a grown-up conversation for another time, isn't it, with them? But there's no point, if you talk to any business owner, and entrepreneurs are usually short, sharp, action-orientated people, aren't they? Much rather have a 5-minute meeting than a 1-hour sort of full briefing, because you're not going to achieve any much more in the hour than you would in 5 minutes if it's done properly with a short agenda with outcomes, is it really?
Absolutely. It's all about bullet points. For me, it was a case of emails, bullet points, text messages, bullet points, just get to the points. It wasn't like I didn't want these long emails, and all my staff knew it was a case of just short, sharp bullet points.
That's just the characteristics, though, isn't it, really? And that's about communicating the right way for the right information that you want. Okay. We've touched on this a little bit. You didn't really have an end game when you started, because you didn't have a next week game, did you, for Salma Beauty Academy, let alone an end game, I guess. But when did the end game become? What was the little light bulb that said, you know what, I might think about selling my baby, because it is your baby, isn't it? You've invested blood, sweat, tears, 10, 12 years, probably more. 16 years.
I started
wow.
the business when I was 19.
Wow, 16 years into the business. What was the spark that thought, okay, maybe I could move on to something else without it being heartbreaking or heart-wrenching for you?
I think when it came to that business, I felt as if I'd pretty much done everything. We were doing training courses from Isle of Man right down to Cardiff, so done that. I had a contract in Germany, so taught out there. I partnered with a couple of universities in Dubai and also did masterclasses in Hong Kong and Malaysia. So I'd done quite a lot of things, and I felt like, okay, the world's your oyster, but I think I've done everything I possibly can, had every single beauty course that you could think of. I'd won 4 awards, business awards, and thought, okay, time to give my energy somewhere else now. Otherwise, I'm just going to be running this, doing the same thing. And it was becoming repeat for me.
Yeah. So again, going back to the entrepreneur gene pool, that's when it gets a bit mundane, doesn't it? You love fresh, new, exciting, different challenges. So if it becomes sort of just repetition, I guess, did you fall a little bit out of love with it to a certain extent?
I got bored.
Yeah. So that's not the same question. I guess bored rather. You wouldn't fall out of love with your own business, would you? I know what you mean, but just a bit bored by the day to day.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you decided to think about selling, then what sort of process? How long did that take from having the idea to finding the right buyer? Because I'm assuming with the people involved, it had to be the right buyer, not just the buyer, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Initially, the thought crossed my mind probably around about April the year before, so it took me almost a year.
Yeah.
When the buyers came along, I had initial offers on the table, and I decided I wanted to go with the particular offer that I did. It was more so for my staff safety as well.
Yeah.
It was almost like handing my children over to somebody else, you know. So, and the day I told the staff, I was quite emotional myself, more so because they were lovely. You know, I had a fantastic team, and you really can't do anything without a fantastic team.
Well, I did some training with your team going back in the day, and I have to say, it was one of the most fragrant training rooms I've ever been in. They're all sort of beauticians and you know, senior members of your team, and the smells were fabulous. It was the most beautifully pungent and lovely training I've ever worked in. So it's not the hardest gig I had to do, really. You know, training people who smell lovely in a training room. So I do remember that one. That was going back some time. But okay. So in terms of your new venture, SK Cosmetics, you've already identified it was a potentially crowded market, but for the first time ever, you did a bit of research and found it wasn't, which is good. What did you bring to the new venture then from your previous business experience? Are you a different animal to the person who set up Salma's Beauty Academy? And if so, what is it that you've brought from all that 16 years of learning that's helped you get SK Cosmetics up and running?
Oh, a heck of a lot. When I initially started Salma's Beauty Academy, I thought it was just going to be myself and maybe an admin girl that would just help me out. I'd do all the training and so forth. And it grew and it grew. It grew good. I didn't have at that time, all the policies, processes. The foundation wasn't set because as the opportunities came my way, I just grabbed it and then decided I would deal with it. However, when you've got contractual obligations, you've got targets to hit, you've got all sorts of things going on there, and you're sort of chasing yourself backwards because then you're sort of thinking, oh, suddenly I need an environmental policy, or I need this policy and I need that handbook, so you're sort of then setting the ground and you need process maps so everybody's working and singing off the same hymn sheet and so on.
It's harder to implement them as a moving feast though, isn't it? From,
Absolutely.
Whilst you're already working, trying to implement them, you're sort of backfilling, aren't you? It's a lot harder, that, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, because you're so sort of eager to just move forward with what you need to do as opposed to doing all these boring bits of writing all these terms and conditions or whatever it may be. So this time round, it was a case of, no, the foundation has to be there, it has to be solid, and then I'll grow on that, as opposed to with Salma's Beauty Academy, it was technically the other way around.
The other way around, okay.
It worked, but it wouldn't always work, would it, I suppose?
No, I mean, sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you make your own luck, sometimes the opportunities arise, etc. But so do you think SK Cosmetics has built on a stronger initial foundation than Salma's was?
Absolutely.
What's your ambitions for that then? 42 staff, 65 countries, world domination awards. Where do you see SK?
I don't want to have as many staff this time around because I think the e-commerce business sort of takes over. So what technically the manpower would do in the service sector, which Salma's Beauty Academy was, this is more so providing a product. There is an actual physical product. So I would like to branch out into international countries.
Right.
I have had inquiries and so forth, so I'm working on them. So let's see what the future holds.
Okay, so world domination awaits for. We'll get the listeners to look out for SK Cosmetics. Is it hard to scale up a cosmetics business? Are you manufacturing as well then?
Yeah.
I mean, there must be some manufacturing challenges around scale ups on that basis, aren't there?
How it actually came about was. During the last business award I won a couple of years ago, the table next to me, the company was a pharmaceuticals company. One of the things that they do was also specialise in skincare products and so forth. And I just started chatting to the lady. She says, "What's your favourite skincare product?" And I says, "Well, I've got a few." She says, "What do you use every day?" So I says, "Well," she says, "tell me something different rather than just a standard lotion." I says, "Well, there's this one particular product and it's like an oil, but actually it foams up. So you apply an oil, it takes off your makeup and it foams up." She says, "Well, I'll tell you what, I bet you I could make some of that for you and you could put your label on it." So how do you mean? I says, "I'm sure there's more to it than that." She goes, "Well, yes, of course there is, but I can create you a sample." So, "Oh, that's interesting." So she says, "Well, come see you at the office." I says, "That's fine."
And that was over just a dinner and awards dinner sat at the next table.
So that's how it came about. And I thought, wow. She sent me back a little bottle in the post and it was exactly the same thing. And what I had sent her was only a small amount.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, that's amazing. There's slightly difference in texture. It was slightly thicker and so on, but it wasn't the end of the world. It was brilliant. And I thought, gosh, this is interesting. And that's when light bulb.
So your interest was piqued about, never thought I could do. I mean, because obviously you're applying makeup and beauty products as part of the academy and things, but somebody else's. So that was the first time you sort of thought, what if, that kind of thing?
Well, over the years, a lot of people have said, "Why don't you bring out your own brand? Why don't you bring out your own brand?" And it's always, no, never. I haven't got time for all of that.
But that's because you were too busy, though, at that time, wasn't it? That's a different dynamic. When you're busy running a business with 42 staff in various countries, I can see why you would say no purely on time pressure. Didn't mean you didn't have the ambition at the back of your mind to say one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. It's really weird accidentally how that comes about, though, isn't it? Because if that hadn't come about as a conversation, would you even know where to have started and gone from making your products in that sort of way?
Probably not.
Interesting. I do love stories with that kind of accidental nature to them, really, because you think just a series of random opportunities, isn't it,
Yeah.
and conversations. But you are chatty though, aren't you? So I suspect that you weren't sort of sat there, glowing in your award. You'll have been chatting to people about all sorts, and that's how conversations come about, don't
Oh
they?
yeah, and they'd also want to know what it was like. Come here, come on, let's take pictures, And they were like, oh, okay then. So I was like really like extrovert, and the gentleman was like, oh, okay, shall I not? And that's how the conversations came about.
Good stuff. Okay, so the moral of the story is get yourself out to awards dinners, black tie dinners, and keep talking to people. You never know what happens.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
I've talked about entrepreneurship a bit already. I heard a phrase the other day, solopreneur, and I've also heard one called a mumpreneur, which is, I think, is quite hard to pronounce, to be fair, mumpreneur. I'm not knocking people who are sole traders. I'm not knocking mums working from home, but are we going too far with these kind of definitions? They've just used the word preneur and shoehorn something on the front of it. What's your view on that? Because we've identified an entrepreneur takes financial risks and things. I'm not saying a solopreneur doesn't and a mumpreneur doesn't, but are they real? Are they valid sort of definitions in your world? Have you come across them?
I have actually just very recently, like yourself, in the past couple of weeks, I came across that and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And automatically what came to my head, the lady says, I'm a momtrepreneur. And automatically what came to my head was, is this a mom working from home? So is it a definition that they're using to say that I'm really busy, I'm working from home, I'm doing something for myself, but actually I've also got a toddler running around in the background?
And by the way, that's absolutely fine, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Yeah.
And that's how I started.
But that defines them as a micro business that will always be a micro business. So my view on it, if you want to be a mum-trepreneur or mumpreneur, I wasn't sure which one it was, is that might be a fine starting point. But if you've got ambitions to grow, are you reducing your initial impact by restricting kind of what people's perception of that would be? I was just interested in what your thoughts were, really.
I think that's right. I think once you give yourself a label, you tend to sort of stick to it, which is why in things like business, if you were to ask me, like you earlier did, what's your goals for SK Cosmetics and where do you want to go? It's far more powerful when you do like a public statement because you want to hold up to it.
Yeah.
So if you label yourself as a momtrepreneur or a soultrepreneur, are you always going to, are you quite happy with that? Are you always going to stay there? That might be your plan and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine. But if you want to grow, that soultrepreneur, momtrepreneur might quite quickly become entrepreneur.
Okay. So going back to the entrepreneur, what are the characteristics that you think define someone who might traditionally be described as a genuine entrepreneur? So, what's in your DNA? What is it about you? And entrepreneurs move in circles with other entrepreneurs usually. You must know lots of people like you who've either accidentally or deliberately grown very successful businesses. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the common themes and the threads and the DNAs and some characteristics in there that we should be looking for?
Yeah. For myself, when I started the business, it was ambition, it was determination. I'm really determined. So if I said to you, I'm going to do so-and-so, I will do so-and-so. Mm-hmm. And that's my DNA. It's more... I'm really determined to do something and I will do it. Eventually that grew into ambition because then it's a case of next step.
What can we do with that? Rather than I want to do it, but now I am doing it. What do I actually want to achieve with it, kind of thing?
Of course, the world's your oyster, so it's a case of just keep going.
Okay. Anything else in there, do you think? Obviously, hard work is part of that process. I've never met an entrepreneur yet who is lazy. Never met an entrepreneur yet who, has duvet days. I think, I just haven't, they're all hardworking, focused, determined, etc. Was that in you as a child at school, in either competition in terms of sport or academia and things? Were you a competitive sort of little Salma when you were at school?
I wasn't actually. I wasn't very competitive as a child. I was fine. I was quite happy if somebody thought they could do it. I was the sort of person that'd sit back and say, well, you said you do it then. Rather than, okay, then I'll show you what I can do. I wasn't very competitive. I was more so, that's fine. As I grew up, I think I started becoming more competitive. I always wanted to achieve something or do something. And there was always, if somebody said something to me, and it could be anything, the question that was always in my head was why. And I do that quite a lot at home, actually. If mum and dad or anybody says, some brothers and sisters goes, why? And they're like, well, actually, just because we said, but why?
So you'd be a pleasure to have a conversation with sometimes, won't you, really? Press, push, press, push, press, push.
I can be devil's advocate.
Yeah, okay, well, that's good. I think it's important, though, that people look and say, you know, what are the characteristics I'm going to need? They might want to call themselves an entrepreneur, but if you haven't got certain things in your DNA, it'll be much harder work than it will be to be intuitive and just, you know, give it a go. You do take risks, though, don't you?
Risk, yeah. You've got to be a risk taker. You've got to sort of say to yourself, well, I'm going to do this. I'm determined it's going to work. And if it's not going to work, I'm going to fall flat in the mud. But guess what? I'm going to get up and do it better. Rather than sort of just say, well, it's not worked. Okay, I give up.
Or it might not work, so I won't try in the first place. That's the worst part of that process, isn't it? Where you fear overrides the requirement to do it. I could try it, but what if it fails? Well, you know what? If it does,
get up and do it better.
Yeah. There's a different approach in the UK to the US, I think. In the US, there's much more of that kind of get up and go, give it a go, try again, try again, try again. In the UK, it's a little bit more frowned upon, I guess, in some respects. You know, oh, it didn't quite work. Oh well, you know, go and get another job, that kind of stuff. So culturally, we have a slightly different dynamic to other parts of the world, and certainly America has that perception. It might not be real, but a perception that, you know, it's the land of opportunity, and give it a go, and give it another go type thing. So were you born in the wrong continent, do you think, Salma?
Oh, I don't know. I think you've got to be persistent.
Yeah.
You've got to be quite persistent. And quite often I used to say to my sales girls that in the mildest way possible, you're sort of almost kind of a little bit aggressive. So you're not sort of thinking, I'm not going to pick up this phone and ask somebody if they want to purchase something. You're just going to pick up the phone and close that sale.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it's fine. You just move on to the next person.
I loved working with you when we're doing that, though, because that's the same ethos I have from a sales point of view. The worst that can happen is someone says no. Actually, it's not true. The worst that can happen is you don't make the phone call to someone to say yes or no, do you? That's the
absolutely
difference.
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
What percentage of people do you think have got an entrepreneurial gene or the ability to be entrepreneurs? Because I don't think it's for everyone, but I'm interested from your viewpoint. You know, what percentage of people do you think could and maybe should think about giving it a go?
Quite a large percentage. I think everybody has the ability to go for it. Everybody, they just need to sort of awaken the inside spirit that's kind of going to give them the get up and go. But they need to put to bed the negativity and that little voice that keeps propping up to say, no, don't do it. You're quite comfortable where you are. It's a case of just get up and go. Just do it. Don't listen to that voice. It's quite difficult to say the exact percentage.
No, but you know, there'll be some people who like the regularity of a paycheck on the certain, you know, 25th of the month, and they don't want the risk and they won't take that. But in my view, I think that might be 20-25% of people would never do anything that rocks that boat or upsets that potential kind of risk balance. But I'm probably thinking 70-75% of people could have an entrepreneurial spirit, which is whether it's hidden or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people are quite happy with a robotic lifestyle. Go to work at this time, finish at this time. That's it. Get paid at this date. I don't think I could do that. No. I'm quite sort of like a little bit of sprinting here and there.
Yeah. So. You're almost unemployable in a good way, aren't you? Really, I would imagine, because of that kind of, you know, characteristic of activity and action and trying something new and all that kind of thing. That wouldn't always work in an employed situation, would it really?
Probably not. And I'd probably get quite bored quite quickly.
Okay. When I was at school, and I'll say for my children listening, about 100 years ago, I think they would say, running your own business was never even discussed. It was never an option. The careers people, such as there were, never said, oh, you know, you've got what it takes to be successful running a business, that kind of thing. That's changed dramatically, certainly over the last 10 or 15 years. And do you think any influence of that's come down from things like The Apprentice, or we've got in the UK, we've got Dragon's Den, it's called Shark Tank in the US. Are these programs influencing people to be more ambitious about, hey, I could try that? Do you think there's any correlation between that and people's, you know, younger people setting up businesses earlier?
Quite possible. When I was at school, I did business, and I must say everything that I learned in business, I didn't quite use much of it in my business. It was a case of everything that I learned in my business, I don't think no qualification or course would have taught me. Yeah. What I do find in schools is in academia, they kind of program your brain to be academic as opposed to sort of get up, go, take risk. It's all about the safety net. And programs like The Apprentice, they do sort of awaken the mind to say, actually, there is an adrenaline rush. It is exciting. It is, I think I can do that. You know, everybody's got really different ideas, really nice, good ideas. Some things are like ideas that you'd have never have thought of. And if they can make that and flourish that into a business, I think there's a lot of potential for people that actually have a skill.
Well, I've never missed one episode of The Apprentice in the UK, I think in 15 seasons. It's one of my absolute favourite programmes. It's more a bit of a car crash TV kind of thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some of them, and you look at the characters on there, and I know it's a reality show rather than a business show in some respects. I watch it in terms of how not to do stuff sometimes, or for really good content for training courses, and think, is that how you would really approach negotiation or pitching or product development, that kind of thing? But it does inspire people, doesn't it, watching, to think, well, if they're on telly doing that, surely I can achieve that myself.
It does. Some of the things in the pictures that I've seen, honestly, sat on my sofa, it makes my toes curl. I think, no way did you just come out with that, or did you just say that? And I keep saying to my son that, look, this is exactly how not to do business.
Yeah. Okay. How old's your son?
16.
16. So at the right age for nurturing first steps into the adult world and all that kind of thing. Okay. I'm going to touch on that. There's a lot of advent recently around social media, influencers, celebrity, routes to sort of riches, really, and, you know, YouTubers and that kind of stuff. Do you think that sort of people look at that in an unrealistic way and say, oh, I could be a YouTuber and make millions because somebody is doing that already? And does that affect people's work ethics, do you think? Have we got a different dynamic now in terms of the people's expectations are, well, I could be a celebrity, or I could, you know, be I can go on Love Island or one of these reality shows and make some money. You know, where does that sit versus hard work? Because it frustrates me I'm much older than you, and I've been around many more blocks, I think, in that respect. But it frustrates me when you see people going, well, I just want to be a YouTuber. But the YouTubers are on YouTube. We're early adopters and put the work in and stuff. It's not a shortcut, is it?
No. I think what people forget is what you see on YouTube or what you see of an influencer is what they want you to see.
Yeah.
You only see a short snapshot of their day. I have many followers on things like Snapchat, and what people forget is quite often I've had remarks like, oh, it's all right for you though, isn't it? Or you've got a fantastic team, or you just sit at work having these massages, and actually that's far from it. What people see is probably about a minute of my day that I choose to let them see.
Yeah.
And people look at the good things and think, if he can do that, I can do that. Or if she can do that, I can do that. And that's absolutely fine. You probably can. But there is hard graft, hard work, hard efforts, an investment that's been ploughed into becoming that. And I have come across a few youngsters that have said, I want to be a YouTuber. All right, okay, what's your expertise? What are you teaching on YouTube or so on? Nothing, I'm just having a little bit of a banter.
Can you make a career out of that?
Probably not.
Probably not. Some people have, but they've worked hard to get to doing that.
Yeah, they may make an income out of it, because many people have made an income out of banter on YouTube or whatever.
But you've got to have a skill, haven't you? You've got to be sharing something surely of value or interest, because that must have a short shelf life potentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd be quite scared about the securities in that.
I do sound like an old fart. I appreciate that. So I'm just thinking in terms of, I just think you still can't differentiate from the fact that if you want to achieve something, you've got to have a work ethic gene, haven't you, really? Okay, no worries. Now, one piece of advice you give anyone thinking about setting up their own business, you've done it a number of times. What would you say, because you've done it in two different ways, certainly with the last
Completely.
two. What advice would you give to somebody who's thinking, you know what, I do want to give it a go. I will take a risk. I will back myself. I will invest some time, effort, and energy in seeing if I can make it go. What's the advice you would give someone to get them off to the best possible start?
Plan and research. Don't let it put you off, though. Don't let your research put you off. And I've come across a lot of people when we've been, particularly those that have been taught beauty, and they say, "Oh, it's fine. The lady next door is doing it for £5. I'm going to do it for £4." And I says, "No. You don't. That's not what business is about. It's not about undercutting.
No.
Actually, in terms of the beauty arena in our local area where I'm from, in Batley, was probably one of the most expensive around. But business was fine. It's, there's a lot of other things. It's how you portray yourself. And one of the things I used to say to these mobile therapists that wanted to start business from home, entrepreneurs, like we talked about earlier, it was a case of, well, you need to identify, are you going to be sort of short, sharp and savvy people come, quick turnaround, and it's just cheap and cheerful? Are you going to be in between? Are you going to be sort of giving them a premium service? They come in, give them a cup of coffee. That's how you sort of identify yourself in the marketplace. I think many people didn't quite understand that. It was just a case of their research meant look around the local area, what people are charging, just go a little bit lower.
That's a race to the bottom, isn't it? No one's making money at that level, are they?
No. And then there's enough money to be made for everybody to have a decent living. You've just got to work for it and earn it.
So you're saying there, in terms of understand what you do, understand where it sits, and be prepared to charge the right price for the right service and the right product.
Yeah, the research that you do and the planning that you do prior to setting up the business, make sure it's for the correct purpose and the right purpose, not to set you up for failure. Okay,
excellent advice. Last question. What's next for Salma and SK Cosmetics then? What's next? If I got you back on the podcast in a year's time, what would we be talking about?
In a year's time, I'll have hoped to have launched a fair few new products and new ranges, which are all in the being and the making as we speak. So, which is all exciting, and hope to be in far more outlets than we already are.
Excellent. And global domination awaits maybe 2 years down the line.
Oh, yes.
Excellent. Salma, it's been an absolute pleasure, as I knew it would be. Love talking to you, meet you a few times on different courses and networking. So thank you for being a guest on the Impact Sessions. Thanks for coming in and sharing your view on entrepreneur and serial sort of business development skills. I hope the audience have been inspired. Your contact details will be on the end of the podcast for people to get in touch with you. So thanks for being a guest on the Impact Sessions.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Nick. It's been a pleasure.
Problem. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.